Well, just discipline alone is it's a really interesting thing, and it's like you were saying earlier when I was saying kind of like everybody's lazy, and it doesn't mean that everybody's lazy at everything, but everybody's got areas of their life where they're lazy, and everybody hits spots where they don't feel like doing anything, and it's kind of like I don't believe that people are inherently lazy or not, like it's a genetic thing, or I mean it could be diet related and stuff as well, yeah, but I think on a deeper level, and even the diet stuff I believe is kind of related to these really deep desires, what it is that you want, like on a really deep level, because like all, like emotions are all attached to what we want, and and it's come down to attachment and which way you're directing yourself, and whether you're kind of being completely self-centered or driven by insecurity or driven by some desire to serve a greater good. And it was only once I mean obviously you can, I think kind of on both sides of that there's like a middle grey area where you're kind of like lost and you don't know what on earth you're doing. There's like there's like a maleficent, like sort of really evil path that you can take that probably they don't think is evil, but would, like, on a general consensus, people would be like, Adolf is a bad person. That kind of thing where he's like super driven by God knows what, but he had a motivation and he maybe didn't think he was doing a bad thing. But like I found, like, hopefully on the other end of the spectrum, I don't know what people's kind of general judgment is of what I'm doing, but since I've tried to serve a greater good and kind of done, no, it's not, I haven't done it, it's happened. Everything is kind of aligned, like your life, because when you've made this helping people through exercise your life, and everything is aligned through this desire to help people through mental health, through things that I've been gifted with and equipped to do it. Like, I've just got this motivation now. I wake up, I was like, right, I've got this, I already know what I want to do. And it's just great. And like that, and now I'm not lazy.
Yeah.
In my opinion, now.
Yeah, no, I think not. Like, every time I see you doing something.
I have been.
Yeah.
Many times in my life, I've had 2 periods in my life where I haven't been to work for 3 months at a time, and I've pretty much just sat and stared into thin air and had really bad anxiety. Like, really bad anxiety. So bad that I can't work or do anything or pretty much be around anything annoying because it just irritated me too badly. And that was seemingly lazy, but clearly, like, really bad episode of some kind of mental ailment. I was not in a good way. And then now, when I, barely have any anxiety unless there's a reason, unless something happens. And what was the difference? The difference is that I've got direction. And kind of like I'm sort of like I feel like I'm doing the right thing, and it's like an internal inspiration. It's not like I'm, because that's the funny thing I've realised with motivation is that for you to have motivation, there needs to be a motive, there needs to be a reason, and it's got to be something. And I think either you can be trying to externally motivate yourself by the changing things outside of yourself, or you can commit to some kind of higher cause where from within there's this just internal and also providing this fulfilling thing that's going on, and you kind of, it's amazing when you actually find that, and it's not always. But
I think, and I think also that, like, it's not something necessarily that you can just, like, ask. Like, you can ask for it. You can ask for it in prayer, something like this. But you can't just, like, get it. You can't really. All right, this is going to be the thing that I focus on. It just comes. It does, doesn't it? It just comes. But when it does, I think a lot of people don't pursue things because they're worried. And this is kind of like one thing I've been fortunate, like one perspective I've been fortunate to have. I'm not sure why I've got this perspective. Probably someone somewhere has taught me it, or I've learnt it from them. So what will often happen, I believe, is that someone will not decide to pursue something that they feel aligned to themselves in that moment because they think that it's not going to be sustainable, in 10 years' time, in 2 years' time, in a minute's time. They're not going to want to do it anymore. They're going to change course. Like, to me, changing course is not a problem. Not a problem at all. There's a book I like, and what he talks about, and this really resonates, like peeling the layers of the onion until you get to the centre. And I think what you're saying there, the centre is finding God and he's becoming more aware to God. Maybe that's the centre for most, for seems, spiritual practice, that's what the centre is. But whatever it is, just peeling back them layers of the onion, you're just getting deeper and deeper to who you truly are. And that's, I think, I'm in this maybe outside layer, and maybe the next layer will be something else, and the next layer but I'm more than willing to give up what I do now if it's no longer aligned to who I am. That's just the way it is. It's just the way things go. And I think a lot of people don't get pursued on something, don't get fixed on something because they are scared that in a year's time they won't want to do it anymore, and they don't want to give all this time and give all this sacrifice, spend all this money on developing and upskilling. Like, it's all the same stuff. Like, there's so many parallels from what you do to what I do to what there's lessons everywhere, So I think, to me, if you decide that you don't want to pursue something because you're worried that you're going to change your mind, I think that's, it's not what I believe to be true from my experience, and certainly from observing other people.
It's really, that concept is kind of really hard for some people to get their head around. I mean, the word God, especially being as a fact, as soon as you say that word, everybody has preconceived ideas of what they think that means. And from what I understand through spiritual life is you cannot perceive what God is through any material thing, including the mind, because as soon as you're trying to understand spiritual with material, and that's not possible. So I think, talking about that is like really heavy for some people, but that's kind of where I've come to through my spiritual practice. And since I've kind of aligned myself around that it's really easy for me to get there through my own unbelievably profound experiences that I've had in my life. But for the people who kind of can't make that quantum leap to being like, all right, well, there's this super like energy that is actually responsible for everything, that is actually the thing that is connecting everybody together, so that we're not all just this relative thing, all kind of loosely, chaotically floating around by ourselves in infinite space, which is infinity itself is an unbelievably hard thing for people to get their head around. And for anybody that kind of has a real problem with the idea of like God, but like just consider a concept is that every single thing that we have ever seen and can know or think of within this material universe, even by scientific discovery, has all come from a single point. So from a single point, there's been an explosion, and poof, and all this material, including us and everything, came from this big. Now, how is that possible? How is it possible that there can be an explosion and like, poof, and quantum physics knows that everything is just vibrating energy.
Yeah.
It's energy. And if you if you zoom in on everything, it's all made up of the same things. It's all atoms, and it's all made up of protons, neutrons, and electrons. So if you zoom in on this on this table in front of me, and a piece of dog shit, or even let's say a bar of chocolate and a piece of dog shit, underneath, like on a microscopic level, they're exactly the same. Which is why the yogis understand that this whole world, this whole material manifestation is just like a world of names. It's like illusory. Mm-hmm. It's weird. And people struggle to get their head around these ideas when you kind of make a quantum leap from, atheism, which is not equally as... I had this conversation recently, and I kind of like... And it's a hard conversation to have with people. And I don't talk about it very often.
Yeah. Don't matter, does it? Don't matter, like, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it's just like, just enjoy it. Yeah.
But it's like almost impossible to prove a negative. Like, how do you really prove something doesn't exist? It's not like you can show them it. Like, look, this doesn't exist, and it's like, well, there it is. Because you can't. Yeah. Because if it doesn't exist, you can never find it to prove it. Yeah. So I can understand why atheists say it doesn't exist, I've never seen it. But to say that something doesn't exist full stop means that they know everything.
Yeah.
Which is why to be an atheist and to be like, to say that definitely 100% doesn't exist means that I know everything, which is an unbelievably arrogant statement. by
Yeah.
definition.
Yeah, I think just curiosity, isn't it? Like curiosity is a good thing to be going around with. I think that helps with growth. Like, because if you just like, oh, I wonder. Like, I mean, at the moment I'm studying my masters in S&C, strength and conditioning. So that is very much, you know, you read papers, you learn about anatomy, you learn scientific method. But at the same time, I've got a burning desire to go to China, like a temple in China where they do Shaolin kung fu and they do qigong as well, and obviously a lot of meditation. And I want to go there and I want to learn about this stuff. This is not science. There's not much literature that goes over qigong or Shaolin kung fu or anything like this, but it's different, and clearly it's very effective to develop athleticism and to develop, you know, the other qualities as well. But it's not, doesn't really fit the mold of scientific literature. Like, there's nothing really there on that. But it's just curiosity. It's like, well, you know,
There actually is an unbelievable amount of literature and scriptures out there and stuff. And I always kind of like, you know, what drove me away from religiosity is not the scripture, but the people.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a lot of nutters out there, and there's a lot of fanatical people. And there's a lot of religious fanatics that, you know, get the shit and they throw it down people's throats. And that, as soon as someone says, "Oh, this person's Christian," you're like, "Oh God!" Straight away, I'm just like, "Oh my God, I don't want to talk to him." And I have those thoughts. And it was only through, you know, taking up a spiritual process, which essentially Christianity should be a spiritual process. Jesus was like a spiritual master, but the people who are practicing Christianity aren't. I'm sure some of them are getting it, but a lot of them, they're just kind of like, "Oh, I've become a Christian," and as soon as you get through the baptism thing or whatever, christening, as soon as you do that, it's like, "I am a Christian," and it's like, well, what does that mean? It doesn't mean that you've perfected some spiritual practice. It doesn't mean that you have a connection with, like, this divine connection that's fulfilling and bringing purpose and meaning to your life. And what blew my mind is that when you observe the character of Jesus, and then the character in all the Vedic scriptures and all the scriptures about religiosity, they all have the same transcendental type of characteristics. It's not like there's just this one guy, Jesus, who was really wonderful. It's like, no, there's loads of these people.
Yeah.
But this is just one book about one person, but there's actually there's a ton of this stuff out there, and it's all the same, and the essence of all these things is exactly the same. And Jordan Peterson was giving a lecture, and he's like, you know, they've kind of like shut down on religion, and they've kind of like got rid of it because they realised it's like the opiate of the masses. You can kind of brainwash people with this stuff. Obviously, the church aren't necessarily practicing that. They're not doing it. They ain't doing what you should do. They're basically just using it for power and manipulation. They're interested in power and wealth. They're telling people that they have to give all their money, and they manipulating it.
Yeah.
But so people, they've kind of thrown religion out. It's like, yeah, you've thrown religion out because of this one bad quality, but you've also thrown the baby out with the bathwater. You know, you're like, because the bathwater was dirty, you've thrown the baby out as well because, you know, when you think about why do people act? Why be good? What's the point? You know, like all these teachings, like, you know, love your neighbour like your brother, don't murder people, thou shalt not covet thy neighbour's goods, which basically means you shouldn't look at other people's stuff and be jealous or envious of it. And these are things that, like, I'm not being funny, but like, we really need to start applying these things to our life.